September in the NFL calendar is known as the month for things that we think we know. December is the month for things that we know we know. And so as we get to this last month of the regular season, we're going to talk about 3 things each that we know we know. Even if it's not guaranteed, we're pretty darn sure. We have some pretty big sample sizes here. So again, EJ and I each picked out 3 things that we know as we hit the home stretch. Before we get to number 1, though, EJ, my friend, how are you?
I'm good. This is the flip side of the calendar. As you said, September is the month we go, I don't know, we'll figure it out. And we get fooled all the time. People put up all kinds of false positives. We fall for it. We try not to in the first couple of weeks. Sometimes we do in the second couple of weeks. December is the exact opposite. December is, we've been looking at these teams for a while now. Injuries have happened. Trends have happened. We've seen them play good teams. We've seen them play bad teams on the road, at home, in the weather, all of that. And we've got basically 4 or 5 games left that matter. And we can look at these and say, yeah, I'm pretty sure about these things.
Little disclaimer, we're recording this on 11 a.m. Thursday morning. So the Lions-Packers game has not happened yet. None of the Week 14 games have happened yet. So we're kind of going off of weeks 1 through 13 here, or in some cases like weeks 10 through 13 if we're looking at recent trends as we get later in the show. So if something catastrophic and or awesome happens during TNF, A, you'll have watched us live react to it during our TNF stream, and B, it hasn't happened yet for us as of the time recording this, so cut us a little slack for that. Also, speaking of that TNF live stream, we only have a few more left this season, so if you joined us in the past for this week's Packers-Lions live stream, we thank you guys for that. Of course, those, as well as every single episode we've done this season, has been brought to you by Underdog Fantasy, so we thank them for their support, whether you're doing pick'ems live with us on these TNF streams or you're doing, Sunday pick'ems. We're getting to the time of year where there's Saturday games, sometimes Friday games. There's obviously still Monday games going on. I think when we get to Christmas week, there's NFL, 5 out of the 7 days that week or something crazy like that. So there's pick'ems going on every single day, not just for football, but also for basketball. So if you want to get in on these pick'ems while you still can during the NFL regular season, Kevin Durant is your new customer free pick on Underdog. Sunday is going to be Justin Herbert, and Joe Burrow is your Monday free pick. So if you're doing any pick'ems this weekend for any sport, make sure to capitalize on those because it's going to make it a hell of a lot easier for you to hit on those. You also, of course, get up to that $1,000 deposit bonus on Underdog by using promo code BOOTLEG. So check that out at the QR code on the screen or at the link in the description. Again, thank you once again to Underdog for sponsoring this entire season of bootleg content. Now, EJ, things we know. Number 1, what you got?
Bills and Eagles, both playing their best football at the perfect time of year. If you're a team in the NFL, now is when you want to be peaking, not falling off that peak. We saw some teams peak too early. Bills have been strong throughout the season. Eagles had, I would say, a muddy start. It wasn't a weak start. It just, we weren't sure about the things we were sure about. Over the last month, that has solided up almost completely for both of these teams. And they look like the 2 seeds right now, but they're probably more dangerous than the 1 seeds in their respective conferences because they are both playing great football on both sides of the ball. And that makes them both extremely dangerous down the stretch. These are the teams you don't want to play right now.
And especially when comparing these 2 seeds to the 1 seeds, to your point, KC is the 1 seed in the AFC, but it's been a rocky road the entire time, to say the least. And the Lions, all things being equal, the Lions are probably the best team in football, but they're also the most banged up team in football. I saw a stat earlier today. They have 13 defensive players on IR, not even counting the offensive ones, just defensive players. They have more than a full starting defense worth of guys on IR with 13. The next closest team is 7. So they're basically 2 teams worth of defensive IR stashes at this point. And they're still, again, top of the NFC. So credit to Dan Campbell, credit to the assistants. They have done a remarkable job this year, considering they lost Aiden 6 weeks into the year. and their defense has only gotten better. Like I would say Aaron Glenn for assistant coach of the year, even over his compatriot there in Ben Johnson, just because of what he's been able to cook up without the potential defensive player of the year. And God, it's kind of hard to argue against Dan Campbell for coach of the year at this point too. Again, if he pulls off getting the 1 seed while leading the league in terms of players on IR, like that is just an incredible achievement. So, I don't want to slight the Lions and make it seem like we're saying like, oh, both 2 seeds are the better teams, Buffalo and Philly. But if I had to take Philly versus Detroit right now, just because of all the injuries, like I'd probably lean Philly. And if I had to, do a rematch of Buffalo and KC right now, I have no incentive to pick anybody but Buffalo in that rematch too. If you've seen what they've done since Buffalo beat them. So it is kind of a weird circumstance where we're looking at the first week of December and neither one of the 1 seeds I would take over either of the 2 seeds.
The thing that happens this time of year is we watch these teams, again, played head to head, and the NFL packed the division games all at the end of the year for all the divisions. So we're going to see some change in division standings, but like you said, we have a pretty good idea going into this last month. We've seen these teams develop, and the way Philadelphia has developed, especially on defense, saw a great graph this week. Coach Dan Casey put it up on Blue Sky, and it shows defensive success rates over time, and it shows the individual dots, and then they have a trend line. And the Eagles' trend line for defense over the last month and a half is just a steady rise. If it was a stock, you'd be really happy you owned it right now. The way Vic Fangio has molded that unit together, the way that the rookies have played, Cooper DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell is an absolute killer. The defensive line has been just feasting. Jalen Carter has been doing Jalen Carter things. They are not a team that you want to face right now because it's going to be very tough to score points, and their offense is still loaded. Oh, yeah, that guy named Saquon Barkley who's in the MVP race. So very, very difficult look right now for anybody stacking up against Philadelphia. And yeah, not to take anything away from the Lions and their achievement. We're actually going to talk about them later in our 3 things, or at least I am. And they are a great team, but both the Bills and Eagles look like powerhouses rolling towards the end of the year, which is exactly what you want as a football team.
My first thing that I know is that Brock Bowers should be the front runner, not in consideration for, front runner for Offensive Rookie of the Year over Bo Nix, over Jaden Daniels, obviously over Caleb, over any rookie quarterback. And at this point, if Brock Bowers, if it was voted on today and he didn't win Offensive Rookie of the Year, what is the point of even having the award be eligible for any non-quarterback? Because, he's on pace to not just have the greatest season by any rookie tight end ever, he's on pace to have one of the greatest tight end receiving seasons ever. Now, has he been kind of a one-dimensional player? Yeah, he's not a great blocker, but we also kind of knew that going into the draft process. That was why, I likened him to more of a Dalton Kincaid type of prospect than a Rob Gronkowski type of prospect, because he wasn't like a true wide tight end. He was, a big slot, a dynamic receiver, all that kind of stuff. But he has been the supercharged version of that type of tight end prospect, that big slot, H-back type of tight end prospect. He's got 916 receiving yards, which is most among all tight ends. He's on pace for like 1298, I think is the exact number. Let's call it 1300. That would be 8th all time for any tight end in a single season. We're talking like early 2010s Jimmy Graham type numbers, right? Like prime Kelsey type numbers. He's got 465 yards and yards after the catch. That is 6th among all players, not just tight ends, but throw in receivers, throw in running backs. 465 is a monster number. He's first in first downs generated among tight ends. He's second in explosive gains among tight ends, only behind Trey McBride. And he's third in yards per route run behind only McBride and Kittle, but with obviously a shit ton of targets because he's basically their only receiving threat people are worried about. So, again, is he a complete tight end? No. Is he one of the greatest receiving tight ends that we've ever seen enter the league? Based on results so far, yeah. So in the absence of a truly remarkable, borderline historic, rookie quarterback season, which is what happened last year. That's why Puka didn't win Offensive Rookie of the Year, because CJ Stroud existed. But in the absence of having a quarterback that's having that kind of year, which we don't this year, how could you not give it to Bowers? So if he doesn't win it at this point, throw out the award, just make it best rookie quarterback, because at that point it would be pointless.
Preach. Choir. You mean EJ's number one bootleg offensive gem from this year's draft, Brock Bowers, that guy?
Yeah, that one.
Color me surprised that he's absolutely exploded onto the NFL scene. He's a decent blocker in space. We should give him his credit there. He is not a guy that's going to dig anybody out on the line, and nor was he in college. If you need him to move around and hit somebody, he's a dynamic athlete. He's got good size and strength. He can do that, but that's not why you draft Brock Bowers. It's for all the routes run, the hands, and the after catch stuff, which was dynamic throughout his time at Georgia. We knew this was coming. This is not suddenly he gets to the league and some coach unlocks. They just unleashed what he already had. He is very tough to bring down. He has great contact balance. We're seeing that. You put up some of the numbers. The thing that really catches me about all the stats you mentioned, and the one you didn't, is where his receiving yards rank overall in the league. Forget position, throw position out. Last time I looked, I think it was 4th. In terms of overall yards.
He's having a historic season by at least historic receiving season, I'll say, by virtually any metric.
Right.
For any position ever,
Yeah, he's tremendous. He's been a great pick for them. I know a lot of people question the pick after spending a decently high pick on Michael Myers. And again, it's not a bad thing to have two of them. But Brock is the superior version of what you were after. Now, Meyer, a better blocker. Not saying he's useless at all. It's very much like Buffalo, right? Buffalo has two very good tight ends. We saw Dalton Kincaid didn't play the other night. Dawson Knox came up huge, right? He's just been sitting there, putting in work, still really good friends with Josh Allen, and can contribute at any time. And I see Meyer very much the same way. Is he the same guy, the same athlete that Bowers is? No. Is he a very solid prospect? And did he have his own very good rookie season before they drafted Bowers? He did. So having two of those assets, not a bad thing. But what Bowers is doing is ridiculous by pretty much any measure. And I agree with you. If he doesn't win the award, we kind of have to look at the award and say, okay, what's it really for?
All right. Number 2, thing that you know. What you got?
Going from the very young in the NFL player to the very long in the tooth NFL player. Reports of Russell Wilson's demise have been greatly exaggerated by us and many others. Again, lots of people jumping on the recency bias bandwagon saying, why didn't you say this summer that Russell Wilson was going to turn the Steelers' fortunes? I look straight at the camera and say, because there was zero evidence that was going to happen. Russ has played a lot of bad football over his last 2 years. There's a little flutter in the beginning of his second year in Denver, but it was a little flutter, and it lasted about 3 or 4 games. And that was it for 2 seasons. And the NFL is the not for long league, the what have you done for me lately league, not rest on your flowers from 4 or 5 or 6 years ago league. So there was no evidence for that. So that's what we were analyzing, looking forward and saying he might be a stabilizing presence, but is he going to elevate this offense? There's just no reason to believe that. Well, Russell said, sure, don't believe you. I got a little bit left in the tank. So he started off with 2 games that were good, but they looked like they were full of false positives. There were those deep balls down the field to George Pickens, which are low percentage completions for most receivers. That didn't really look sustainable. They were good, they were wins, but does that really elevate my, opinion of what Russell's going to do for the offense? Not really. Then he dipped a little bit against Washington and Baltimore. Both games were wins, but statistically he didn't play that well. It was really that complementary Steelers style of football. Will win with defense in the run game. Russ has to do just enough, and he did. But his last 2 games, division tilts versus Cleveland and Cincinnati, he looks reborn. He's playing the best, most confident football he has in years. Completion percentage above 75% in both. Adjusted yards per attempt, 10.3 and 11.2. 4 touchdowns to just 1 interception in that stretch, and ratings of 116 and 126, respectively. This is a guy that is leading an offense, commanding it, understands the players around him, and looks like he is playing at a level that he hasn't played at, again, for 3 or 4 years at least, which is dog years in the NFL. That is forever ago. So all apologies to Russell Wilson for not believing in you. You gave us plenty of reasons to do that. The situation with Tomlin has been perfect. Tomlin comes out of this looking incredibly prescient, and the Steelers come out of this leading their division, looking like the strongest team in it right now. And again, marching towards a possible playoff berth with a guy that looks dangerous at quarterback, despite all evidence to the contrary for the past 2 years. So props to Russell Wilson, props to the Steelers for believing. And I got to say, the Steelers are more fun to watch with Russell playing quarterback right now than they have been in some time.
There was a stat that I think it was Theo Ash brought up, and he was doing a TikTok about how Russ's play style has changed since from Denver to Pittsburgh, and he kind of retooled it. And I couldn't remember what the exact numbers were, so I went onto the old PFF and I kind of put in some filters and wanted to directly compare 20-plus yard throws for Denver Russ last year versus Pittsburgh Russ this year. And, overall his passer rating in Denver was 104.2. Like, that's good. But his deep throws this year for Pittsburgh, and we've talked a lot about their explosive play rates being super high, his passer rating this year is 121.5, which is back prime Seattle Russ, where anytime he threw the ball down the field to Doug Baldwin, Tyler Lockett, any of those guys, it was going to be a big play. So that deep ball Russ is back. And there was a point that Theo made that I want to give you the exact numbers for here, because it tells you exactly what has changed. His average time to throw on 20-plus yard throws in Denver last year, 3.53. He was still trying to do the run around thing, make magic, fuck it, Cortland's down there somewhere type, or Judy, more often Judy, right? Didn't work out as well. This year, average time to throw on 20-plus yard throws, 2.62. He is decisive. He's getting it out. It is, there's my one-on-one. I'm taking my one-on-one. And he's also throwing just really, really good balls to Pickens down the field, or Mike, or whoever, right, that he's targeting. If you're looking at his passing map, he's also worked the middle a little bit more this year by Russ standards. He's not hitting that dagger window like Bo Nix is, where it's 18 to 22, give it to me all day. But, 12 to 15 yards, he's hitting some stuff over the middle. And that's a welcome change of pace as well. So Russ is legitimately playing better with the Steelers this year, but a big reason for that is he's altered his play style from what didn't work in Denver, and he's kind of blossomed into this catch the ball, get rid of the ball quarterback that's not relying on mobility and more so relying on just arm talent, ball placement, all the stuff that he still does have. And that has unlocked the best old man version of Russ that we have seen thus far, and that's why it's working.
He's back to, I think, he has come to that late career savvy that you see quarterbacks with declining physical skills. And I think maybe it took that experience in Denver of running around and getting caught from behind all the time and going, I can't do this anymore. This isn't the thing. If I'm going to play football in the NFL, I'm going to have to change. And he had to change in this way. There weren't other options. It wasn't I'll drop 20 pounds and get back to that. We're past that. And he had to realize he was past that. And now that he has, he's really dangerous. And he might have another year and a half, 2 years of playing this way and being that savvy, wily veteran that's going to hurt you in all the ways that hurt the most. And I'm here for it. I liked Russ in Seattle. I thought his run was not only a historic one for the Hawks, but also just a really fun one for the NFL. And it was kind of sad over the last couple of years to see that go away and say, well, that's just not going to work anymore. And I think what I underestimated was his ability to adapt from what he has literally always done since he got into the league and do something very, very different and do it this well. And he's done both.
Not to skip too far ahead to the draft, because it's not draft season in Pittsburgh in December, which is probably a welcome change of pace for them. But they don't have to take a high quarterback now because of how well Russ has played this year. They can figure out a bridge era with Russ for 2025 at least, maybe even 2026. But this is not the quarterback class to take one super high in. And depending on who declares and who's available, okay, you could talk me into a second round investment because I just don't think long term it's going to be. I don't think Justin's like the heir apparent there. I just don't think it is. Like you could talk me into investing in a day 2 upside developmental, like let's just see what happens type pick, but they're not in the same like Kenny Pickett position back then where it's like, Ben's arm fell apart and he's old and our other options are like Duck Hodges and Mason Rudolph. I guess we're taking Kenny Pickett. Like they're not in that scenario. Like they can wait or they just don't have to take one in the first round, which is awesome for them. They have young offensive linemen. We've talked about them ad nauseum when they're healthy. And they could probably use some more help at receiver, but like cupboard's not bare there. Like there is a very interesting, not just present for Pittsburgh right now because of how Russ is playing, but a future for Pittsburgh too, because most of the structure is there and they don't have to take a guy early. So they're not rushing it either. Like I wouldn't be surprised if this era of Pittsburgh is going 9-7 and like maybe they get blown out in the wild card round. Like I kind of feel like that's over now because the foundation is built and they're going to have assets to put up some pretty nice walls and a nice shiny new roof too.
Yeah, it gives them tons of flexibility and mostly it keeps them out of a bad, very high pressure spot that a lot of teams in the NFL end up in, which is we don't have a quarterback right now. We got to sell some tickets. We don't have the highest pick or the quarterback class isn't the greatest, or by the time we get our pick, we're going to be dealing with the 4th or 5th best quarterback in the class. It's not a place where any NFL team wants to be, but supply is limited. There's only so many veteran free agents that you can sell to your fan base as the leader of your team. They usually get taken early and often and get big contracts in free agency because, again, they are rare. And then you're left with the draft. That's it. There isn't some other box that you can open up to grab quarterback prospects out of. And if there was, the NFL would rate it. So the Steelers aren't forced into that situation. They have been before. They know what happens at that point. It sets your franchise back, and they could just basically sit back and say, we are good going into next year with Russ and be confident and sell that to their fans. It's a real luxury for the Steelers.
One quick note, and then we'll get right back to the show. You guys are very familiar with Manscaped at this point because they've supported us forever. But they did just release a brand new addition to their grooming line that you might be interested in called the Chairman Pro, which is an old school electric foil shaver that can give you a professional shave right at home. You can use either the skin-safe 4-blade foil for a smooth finish, or if you want a stubble look, they have multiple options for the stubble trimmer to give you either a 1 to 2 day look or a 3 to 4 day look, depending on your preference. It's also waterproof, so you can use it in the shower if you want, and it makes it easier to clean too because you can just rinse it under the sink. It also, of course, has an LED spotlight so you can see every hair you're trying to shave, and it has up to 75 minutes of runtime. So if you're in need of a new shaver to maintain your stubble or to have a fresh and smooth face every single day, check out the Chairman Pro at Manscaped. And of course, check out everything else they have to offer too, whether it's body trimmers, lotion, shave gels, nose hair trimmers. I mean, you name it, they have it when it comes to grooming. You can see it all at manscaped.com. And if you use promo code BOOTLEG, you'll also get a 20% off discount and free shipping on your order. Again, that is manscaped.com, promo code BOOTLEG. That will give you 20% off and free shipping on whatever you get. Thank you to Manscaped for sponsoring today's show. And with that, let's get back to it. Now, talking about one old quarterback, moving on to another. Kirk Cousins. This is my second thing that I know, but honestly, it's more like I know that I wish. And that's Kirk has one more shot to get this offense back on track because they have been really bad over the course of the last month. I mean, they've gotten some yardage, but it's been a lot of empty calories. They've had turnovers. I mean, for God's sake, watch the Chargers game. There's some bad turnovers, right? And I think Kirk has one more shot against Minnesota because if he can't get this offense back on track, then we're just wasting this season. You know, we're wasting a division lead. We're wasting development time for Michael Penix. I'd rather just get him on the field and see if he can give us a spark, which he probably could, or B, at least just get him some snaps, get him some experience, for going into 2025. Like, if we're going to lose the division, speaking on behalf of the Falcons, if we're going to lose the division, we might as well make it worth it by giving Michael Penix some playing time here. So Kirk has one more shot against his old team, Minnesota. Now, the reason why this offense has fallen off a cliff in a lot of metrics that actually matter is because they're extraordinarily predictable, and teams have data now. Like, they know what they're going to do. That data specifically revolving around how they structure their offense because of the Achilles injury, and he cannot move. And we've talked about this multiple times, but I want to both reinforce what we've talked about before and also add a couple new sprinkles of data that are massively impactful, right? So since week 8, they're about 45% in the pistol, which is actually up from what it was early on in the year. And they've been number 1 in pistol the entire time, but they've only increased their pistol usage the entire time. So 45% pistol is a bonkers stat for any NFL offense. Nobody's done that since like Colin Kaepernick era Nevada. Like, that is insane. And that affects their run pass splits a lot, and also their run direction a lot. So when they're in the shotgun, which is not often compared to other teams, they're about a 90% pass rate. There's not a whole lot of ambiguity there. If they're in the shotgun, they're throwing, which informs NFL defense coordinators what they can do, because they don't really have to worry about fitting the run. They can just call whatever they want to. They can blitz whatever. They can blitz from whatever direction they want to. Like, we're not going to get caught in a blitz against a pin and pull and get gashed here. Like, we can just call whatever fucking blitz we want to. Under center, 85% run, complete opposite. So shotgun, almost guaranteed to pass. Under center, almost guaranteed to run. Pistol, a little bit more ambiguous. It's about 60% run in pistol, but it's not about run pass splits. It's about the types of runs they call in pistol. So there's 70% outside zone because that is how they run most of their outside zone, because Kirk can't get out there and extend over and over and over again to call outside zone from under center. They'll still do it from under center, but a lot less, like 30% less. Outside zone from under center. And I'll see if I can find an image. I think it was in the Saints game where, they're running to the right from under center and outside zone. And he is stretching to get the ball out there because he just can't get to his landmark. Right?
Basically diving.
It's like, please, Bijan, meet me there. I need you to take this ball from me, because he just can't get out there. So when they call their outside zone, it's from the pistol because it's way easier for him to do it. Now, I mentioned run direction. That is also a massive tendency for them, both from the pistol and under center, but especially from under center. Their run rate to the right from under center is 72%. Keep in mind, league average is 46%. Most teams run more to the left when they're under center. Why? Because most teams have a right-handed quarterback. So when you're going to boot off of that or fake a boot off of that, you want a quarterback that's going to be, again, turning around to his left, handing it off or not handing it off, and then booting back the other way, because a quarterback generally is going to be more accurate. A right-handed quarterback generally is going to be more accurate running to his right. So when you're booting off a run to the left, the quarterback is running to the right. If you're booting off a run to the right, quarterback is running to the left. So most teams, when they're running all this wide zone stuff, it's to the left side, not to the right. The Falcons, 72% to the right because Kirk tore his right Achilles. That first step, if you're under center and you're getting the ball, that first explosive step when you're opening up and you're really trying to gain ground to get out there, they're not doing it off the right foot. They're doing it off the left foot because that's the one that was healthy, right? So they can't do what normal offenses do. That's why they're in pistol so much. And that's why when they're under center, they run the wrong direction, or quote unquote wrong direction. And they don't even try to have him fake a boot. Like, again, he has to get out there and extend so much that, like, he just keeps running straight. He's not faking a boot to tie up, like, the backside edge defender like most teams do it. Like, it's just, God, it's so hard to operate this style of offense. And we know what kind of offense Zach Robinson wants to run, but it's so hard to run this kind of offense if your fakes aren't good because you literally can't move. If your run direction has to be skewed that much to one side because your quarterback can't push off. And if you're forced into being in the pistol almost half the time because your quarterback can't move. Like, this cannot work from a structural perspective. It cannot work. So Kirk has one more week to show that he can make it work, which would require him just making ridiculous throws over and over and over again. And if you can't do that, it's Michael Penix time, because then you can actually like run this style of offense like you normally would, like 31 other teams would. And I've been worried about this from the start of the season, and I've only gotten more worried about it since. And I kind of feel like this is it. Like, this is the week. Put up or shut up, or it's done.
Talk about worrying about it. And I feel like most defensive coordinators at the beginning of the year, before they had this film and before they had this understanding, feels very much like an old school kind of like big map spread out on a table the night before a battle, right? And both sides are going, well, what if they hit us from here? Or what if there are troops over in the woods? Or they send some scouts out and they figure some stuff out, but they're not really sure. And then the next morning, the battle kicks off and everybody figures it out. They're out there with their, telescopes, and they're like, nope, coming down the middle. There's some over here. Okay, all this stuff I was worrying about, it doesn't exist. Like, it's not there. Can't see it. And that's what film is for these defensive coordinators. They're like, we don't have to worry about this or this or this, because they literally can't do it, or at least they haven't all season. So the percentages are super, super low. So I'm going to focus on the 3 or 4 things that they can do and really do what most good defensive coordinators do, which is stop that first punch, right? I'm going to force you to your other hand. I'm going to force you onto your back foot. And you don't have to worry, like you said, about, what if, a full range of cavalry comes out of the woods? It can't. It's not going to happen at this point of the season, so they can just focus on what they know the Falcons can do and not worry about what they can't. And it makes it so much easier. It makes it so much more simplified and, quite frankly, risk-free if you're a defensive coordinator. The one thing you have to worry about is microwave Kirk going off from the pocket. And you can constrain that, right? If that is your primary worry, you can align your defense to worry about it. And when all your defenders go, yeah, but what about last week when they could, and you're like, they can't do that. They literally don't have that club in their bag. So I'm with you. It's the way the contract was structured. It was always going to be this way. Kirk was always going to have to light it up, ignite this offense, and keep that flame going. If that didn't happen, these questions were always going to happen, whether or not Penix was there. But because Penix is there and because of the way he arrived, they're going to be louder and quicker. There are, I feel for the guy because he's on the sidelines and the cameras are on him. And every time something bad happens for the Atlanta offense, he's like, I could have fixed it, but I can't dip my head right now.
But you also seems like, don't make a face, don't make a face,
Yep.
don't make a face.
He's standing there going, yeah, totally not how I would have played that, but I can't let anybody know that. And occasionally you see it. He just goes, come on, man, I could have. And then he realizes really quickly, he is a rookie, he is learning. But I'm with you. We're wasting developmental snaps here if Kirk can't do it. And this is probably the put up or shut up week for that. Penix is a rookie. You're going to need to take those rough edges off, and you might as well take them off at the end of this season, playing against, live fire, full speed, NFL speed. He doesn't have that yet. And if you could shave those rough edges off now, it becomes worth it. If you wait to the offseason, it's not the same. You're going to be doing that in the first 4 or 5 games next year, even with the added capacity we think that he would bring this offense. So it's going to be up to the Falcons. They've put themselves in a really tough spot here, and it's really because of the weight of the contract. And I think a lot of people aren't seeing this in the way that we're seeing it, which is, no, they're doing everything they could do. It's not like they have stuff in the bag that they just haven't tried, which is the fact on some other teams in the NFL, not this one. They are maximizing what they can do, and because they can't do anything else, everybody's teeing off on it, and that's a tough way to play football.
All right, your number 3 and final thing that you know heading into this home stretch.
The NFC North is back. We talked about this division in our offseason preview series, and we said, we think they're going to be really tough. Now, as you will all say in the comments, we've said that about a lot of things that didn't work out. A couple of years ago, we thought the AFC West was going to be the Kaiju division.
Oh, God, Don't even remind me.
Not so much. Ugh. I need to remind everybody, because when we hit it, we'll let you know. The NFC North is back. They have 3 teams with 9 wins or more, the most in any other NFC division. There's 1. The NFC East has the Eagles with 10 wins. That's it. No other NFC division has any other teams with 9 wins. It's like the NFC North, 3. The Eagles, 10 wins. Everybody else, below 9. The NFC North is back. Side note, and this segues very well into your third point, which you'll get to, the NFC West is bananas. All the teams are separated by 2 games. The Hawks have 7. The Niners have 5. Both the other teams have 6. If you want to sort of throw a dart division, it's the NFC West. But the NFC North, we said they were going to be back. We said they were going to resemble the AFC North for years and years, a fight every week. Now, look, they are going to be ripping wins off of each other, but that's true of all the other divisions as well. So if anybody's saying, oh, blank is going to coast to the finish because they don't have any tough games, that's not really the way the NFL did it this year. They stacked a lot of division games to pique interest and put as much movement as possible as they could in the schedule up and down the table. Regardless, the strength of the NFC North is not to be debated at this point. There are 3 really good teams and a team that was getting in its own way a lot this year and looks like it's going to be a lot better for the future moving forward. They certainly have their quarterback for a while. Kind of like you said with the Steelers, this division is set up to be good for a bunch.
I have a fun bear stat. Just
the only because. One? Just the one?
Because we talk about the Lions a lot. We talk about the Packers and we talk about the Vikings. Well, we haven't actually talked about the Vikings that much in the last month or so. We got to get back onto that. By the way, I'm still working on that Brian Flores defense video. I'm getting to it. It's been a lot. It's been a lot in production over the last month or so, but I'm getting to that. But I have a fun bear stat that I think will make all 3 other fan bases smile today. So, Caleb Williams has gone 6 consecutive starts with no picks, tying the longest streak by a rookie quarterback since 1950. That's great. One of the only positive Bears things coming out of the last month and a half. Fun fact, though, the Bears are also the first team in the Super Bowl era to lose 6 consecutive games without throwing a pick. Chicago sports, baby. Only them. Only them.
We're good at this one thing. Yeah, but it doesn't mean diddly for the thing that really matters. Oh, yeah, that. Well, you had to bring that up.
It's fucking hilarious. Like this whole division is so funny to me, but especially the Bears. And yes, to your point, the NFC West is not the best division, but they are the most chaotic, and I think that has value all to its own. And that is a great segue, by the way, to the third thing that I think that I know that I know. Seattle is a snake in the grass, particularly because of that defense. Now, they could lose this week because this matchup between Seattle and Arizona, which I don't want to say is like for the division championship, but it kind of has a huge implication on the division championship. This is the matchup between the 2 teams over the last month that have allowed the 2 least amount of offensive points. It's like 18 and 26. Arizona's at 18, Seattle's at 26. So these 2 defenses have played really, really well over the last month. But the reason why I'm kind of picking Seattle as the snake in the grass and the team where their defense could give them a real shot in January. I don't think they're going to go all the way, but they could very easily kind of disrupt the NFC power structure, which is the Eagles and the NFC North. if you're just looking at where this Hawks defense is now versus where it was probably like early October is when Seahawks fans were at their most nervous, right? Because they had a bunch of D-line injuries. Their linebackers weren't playing well. Just nothing was working. They lost to the freaking Giants. Like, it was not a great situation. But you look at them now, and since week 10, when, since then, all their defensive linemen have gotten healthy again. They've made linebacker moves. Mike Mack started blitzing more. They are fourth best in the NFL in terms of successful play percentage allowed. They're the best scoring drive percentage allowed in the entire league, best EPA per play allowed, 26 total offensive points in 4 weeks. Like I mentioned before, only Arizona has been better because Arizona's also had massive defensive improvement. And over the last month, Ryan Grubb has gotten a little bit better. He said, going up several octaves with a ruined voice from a cold. He started running it a little bit more. They were a 70% pass rate in the first few months of the season. Now they're down to about a 62% pass rate. So they're a little bit more balanced, even though they're not super great at running the ball. At least they're trying. Yes, they have the 7th worst true drop back pass protection pressure. How do I say this without having a stroke? 7th best in terms of true drop back pass protection in terms of pressure rate allowed. Say that 10 times fast. So all that to say, not great at pass protection. But because of them running the ball more, they've incorporated more screens, more play action. They've avoided those true drop back passes to begin with. They're 22nd over the last month in terms of true drop back passes. So they're kind of protecting their offensive line from themselves, which has made their offense slightly more bearable. I know a lot of people want to point fingers to Geno this year. I thought Geno's played great. I don't think it's been a Geno issue. I don't think it's been a receiver issue. It's primarily been an offensive line issue to me, as well as Ryan Grubb kind of forgetting that this is the NFL and you got to run the ball. Even if it doesn't work, like you just got to do it. So those have been their 2 biggest issues, but they've gotten mildly better over the last month, and the defense has gotten way better over the last month. So for me, looking at Seattle versus the rest of the NFC, whether it's their own division, which they just beat Arizona, or the NFC North or the Eagles, if they can just kind of engineer themselves to be a really grimy defensive team, and they just rely on Geno and DK and JSN and Tyler Lockett to do something ridiculous like 3 times a game, they legitimately have a shot here. It's not a great shot because, again, the offensive line, like, they are nowhere near the other teams in the NFC in terms of offensive line quality. But it's not like they're not close at every other position on the roster. Like, this is a good roster minus offensive line talent, and those teams can be very sneaky dangerous in January. So just keep your eye on Seattle. They're playing so much better than they were, especially on defense. And I legitimately think they're going to win this division. I think they're going to beat Arizona this week. It's not going to be pretty. It's not even going to be fun to watch, but I think they're going to do it. And then, they're going to end up as like a 3 seed that hosts Green Bay in the first round. And boy, if I'm Green Bay, like, I'd be kind of nervous about that. Like, that defense is really good.
Feels like the Hawks went wandering in the wilderness. They had first couple of games where they looked really good. Byron Murphy got hurt, and then it fell apart. Like, everything fell apart. There wasn't any shining moment to kind of mask Grubb's really struggling. The offensive line is terrible, like bad. The defense doesn't have the personnel through injury or just on the roster that we're looking for. And everybody kind of went, oh, is this a mistake? Like, this looks bad. It looks really bad. And they did that for quite a while. And then the worm turned. They made the linebacker trades. They got the personnel in the building to run Mike Mack's system. And over the last month, My buddy Jackson Bevins up here that writes Cigar Thoughts, great column on the Seahawks. If you don't follow his work, you should. Said something, I think, in his last column, which was, if you don't like what the Seattle Seahawks are cooking over the last month, I don't like your tastes. And it has kind of snuck up on people because I think a lot of people who aren't Hawks fans just kind of wrote it off and said, well, rookie head coach didn't work out like we thought. Probably going to be some changes. They need some more parts, and they just stopped looking. And if you've kept looking, if you're a Hawks fan or otherwise, you're just interested in how football teams evolve over the course of a season, Seattle has gotten it back on track in multiple ways, on the defense for sure, but also on offense. JSN is on an absolute tear, which makes me the happiest guy on planet Earth. I had him as my wide receiver 1, and we didn't see that. And again, that quote he made in the offseason.
And why was it that we didn't see it, EJ? Go ahead, finish that thought.
No, the quote is going around again with all the changes in coaching in Chicago. There was a time in the offseason where JSN was being interviewed by CHGO, and they said, so tell us about Shane Waldron. A lot of Chicago fans really interested, JSN, what can you tell us about that? And he went, it was the most pregnant pause ever. Nothing. And then he said, is this live? And they were like, no, we're not live. And he was like, good luck to them. And
he was struggling so bad.
We kind of wrote it off, and now we know what he meant. Anyways, he gets Ryan Grubb. Ryan Grubb understands how to use him. He's employed him, I would say, to tremendous effect in that offense. I saw a thing this morning, and I can't remember who posted it, that said, look, DK is still the alpha, does all the alpha things. He's going to go out and beat up your primary corner. But in terms of production, it's JSN. He is a 1B right now in the best possible sense, in that if you shut down DK, you're not shutting down the offense. And if you pivot and say, okay, JSN's the real threat, you still got DK freaking Metcalf on the other side. So the Hawks, I'm with you, are a very dangerous team. And again, I'm not going to say peaking because that's hyperbole. They are not peaking, but they are gaining momentum at the right time as a football team. And that's all you can ask for as a fan base going down the stretch.
And I say this as somebody who just watched them play live at MetLife last week. That's why I was out in New York. Well, among other things, I shot a whole bunch of projects while I was out there. But I went to that Jets game, watched the Hawks. Honestly, hand them the game in the first, let's say full first quarter, primarily on special teams, but also they had a couple defensive lapses there. And I wanted to really talk about them today because I saw this team get punched in the mouth repeatedly, mostly because of their own mistakes, and then get back up off the mat and win the game. Like the resilience they showed to recover from special teams mistake after special teams mistake after special teams mistake. I mean, I watched perhaps the greatest thick six in NFL history. It was right in front of me watching Leo pick that off and run it back, which was all the sweeter for him because it's in MetLife, right? And watching DK get hurt repeatedly in that game because, and I can testify to this walking on that turf, it is very hard in the cold. So I don't blame him whatsoever for every time he went down on the ground saying like, oh my God, everything hurts. But he came back in the game and he made some crazy catches and he did his Warrior DK stuff. JSN came up big. Gino on like multiple fourth downs came up big. Like that team got put through the ringer in the first part of that game. And they were down big to a Jets team that, I mean, I didn't think that game was going to be competitive. I thought Seattle was going to blow them out. Next thing you know, the Jets are blowing them out. But when it got to halftime, and I think it was like 21-16, and then I realized like, oh, the Jets fired every single bullet from that gun, and they're only up by 5. Like the Seahawks are going to win this game. And then over the course of the second half, I just saw it slip away more and more and more from the Jets. And I'm like, yeah, man, like they gave Seattle their best shot. And Seattle pretty much turned their chin and took it on purpose. Well, not on purpose, on accident, but they still took it. And then they came back and they finished them by the fourth quarter. I was like, that is a good team that can, recover from mistakes like that. Like that's what we've been praising KC for the entire year, right, is the ability to recover from their own mistakes and still win the game. So I really do love Seattle's makeup. My God, their offensive line sucks. But beyond that, that's a well-coached, talented football team that could really, really do damage in the playoffs. I'm not saying they're going to beat Detroit or Philly to get to like a conference championship game, but like, would I feel safe if I was Minnesota going to Seattle? No. Would I feel safe if I was Green Bay? No. What, like if I was let's say an NFC South team that had to go to Seattle, which I don't think there's any scenario where there could be an NFC South team, but let's say one of them sneaks in as a wild card. Like, would I feel good about going to Seattle? Hell no. That's a good football team. They just need, I don't know, 7 offensive linemen in the draft, and I'll feel good about them for 2025.
All of the offensive things for Christmas for Seattle. Yeah.
Before we get out of here, we would love to hear your guys's things that you know going into the final month of the season. Feel free to drop those down in the comments below, because I'm sure you guys have wildly different convictions than we do at this point. Of course, also want to thank all of our executive producers for Bootleg Football over on our Patreon. Fitzy, Andrew, Connor, Eichen, Liam, and Mike. Once again, thank you all dearly. Thank you to Underdog. Thank you to our clothing partner, Homage. If you want to get bootleg merch or merch supporting your favorite NFL team or college team, pretty much anything you can think of is over on Homage. Of course, use our QR code or the link in the description. Doesn't even matter what you buy. If you buy anything using our link for yourself or for friends and family for the holidays, whatever you want to do, we get a cut of it. So it's a great way to also indirectly support the show. With that, EJ, recovering from my 8-day cold here, I'm going to go drink a monstrous amount of tea and then go to bed.
Sounds good, but I have big news for you about Homage. This is specifically for you, I swear.
For me?
Mm-hmm.
What happened?
They have beanies now.
Oh, okay.
If that's not pandering to Brett Coleman, they have like 8 different colors of very comfy looking beanies. So you got your Christmas gift.
They probably just did that specifically for me, honestly.
100%.
I'm going to send them a thank you note because I feel like they did that specifically for me because I've been bugging them about that for like a year and a half now. So Homage, if you're watching this, thank you for finally dropping beanies. I wish I got one before I went to New York when I filmed in like 30-degree weather for 3 straight days. But you know what? Better late than never. I'll pick them up. I'll even wear them in the summer series in the middle of July.
Right.
Because I can. So
because California kid.
Because California kid. All right. I don't think I have anything else to plug. EJ, I think we're going to get out of here, and we will see all of you next week.